In our top story this hour, a second earthquake has struck Turkey. Initial reports say it was a magnitude 7.6 quake centered in the southern city of Kahramanmaraş. That's after an earlier quake killed more than 1,000 people across Turkey and Syria. A massive rescue operation is underway to find survivors. The UK and the US are among nations offering rescue assistance. Now, the epicenter of this morning's quake was in the southeast Turkish city of Gaziantep. Ankara has announced a state of emergency for the affected regions. Our chief correspondent John Cookson has the story.
This was a massive quake. Aftershock still toppling buildings. The 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck in the early hours while people were asleep, and dozens of aftershocks have been felt since. Situated on or near several fault lines in the Earth's crust, Turkey is one of the world's most active earthquake zones. Quakes are common, but even so, one on this scale brings massive fear and confusion for those on the ground. The epicenter was Gaziantep on Turkey's border with Syria, where buildings collapsed and homes set on fire from gas leaks. Rescue workers and residents frantically searched for survivors under the rubble of crushed buildings in multiple cities. Some experts are saying this may be Turkey's largest earthquake on record, certainly as strong as one that happened over 80 years ago. Turkey's Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu says this is devastating. All our governors, gendarmerie, security forces, Turkish armed forces and search and rescue teams from many points in Turkey are being dispatched to the relevant regions, he said. It was a similar human tragedy across the border in Syria. This father mourning the loss of his baby son. Civil defense workers and local people dug with their bare hands to rescue the living and recover the dead.
Many buildings in different cities and villages in northwest Syria collapsed, destroyed by this earthquake. Our teams responded to all the sites and the buildings, and still now, many families now are under the rubble. Our teams trying to save them, trying to save the people, to save all the people from under the rubble with all capabilities, but it's very difficult task for us. We need help.
No one knows yet how many died, how many homes destroyed, and lives changed forever. John Cookson, Arise News.
And John Cookson joins us live from London for more. Good day, John, and a very warm welcome to Newsday today. I'd like to get straight into it. I know you've been monitoring the story in Turkey and Syria. Devastating, to say the least. Now, what's the latest that you're hearing coming out of that region?
This is a massive human tragedy, at least 1,300 dead, but look, that death toll is going to rise considerably through the day and the coming days. It's still a search and rescue operation in that part of Turkey and also Syria. But, resources are absolutely stretched to the complete limits. There's only so many, officials and rescue teams in the area, and the rest is down to residents pulling people out with their bare hands. It's the scale of this earthquake which is most alarming. I mean, it's not only Turkey and Syria, but shockwaves were felt across the region, Iraq, Iran, and to the west, to as far as Cairo in Egypt. Even Italy had a tsunami warning at one point, thinking that there was going to be a tsunami in the Mediterranean. This is a massive earthquake, and the devastation is absolutely huge. And we're hearing, as you rightly said in the intro, that there was a second earthquake. Scientists are calling it an aftershock. Now, the initial one was 7.8 on the Richter scale. The aftershock was 7.6, which is almost as great as the first earthquake. So This came in the night when people were sleeping. Often, it seems earthquakes do in the darkness, and the terror and the fear of the people must be absolutely extraordinary. I personally was once in an earthquake a few years ago in Hong Kong, and the feeling that you get when the earth is shivering under your feet. I was on a beach and in no danger, but it's just an extraordinary, frightening feeling, and you just want it to stop. Heaven knows what these people went through during the night with this massive quake.
Well, thank you so much, John. Now, do you know why this region is so earthquake prone?
Yes, because the Earth's crust is still moving, maybe an inch or two a year, and what you have is a massive African tectonic plate pushing against the Eurasian tectonic plate. It's this pushing that created the Himalaya mountains in the past, and is still increasing the size of the mountains in the Himalayas, like Mount Everest. But sat in the middle is the Anatolian tectonic plate, which is the area that we're talking about at the moment, that contains countries like Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. And the Anatolian plate is being squeezed by these two massive plates, one pushing north and one pushing south. And as long as the Earth is still developing, this is going to continue for the absolute foreseeable future, because these major plates are still shifting, as I say, it may be an inch or two every year.
Right. Now, what has the response been currently from the international community?
It's been huge. 40 countries and also NATO have offered help to Turkey and Syria. The US and the UK were quick to come out and say, yes, we've got teams we can send at the moment, rescue teams, dogs, for example, to search for people missing under rubble. Other countries, India have promised dog squads. Poland's promised 76 firemen and 8 dogs. Russia say they've got 100 rescuers on standby to send. The same story out of Taiwan, Israel. So there's a lot of offers of help being sent to Ankara and also to Damascus, the Syrian capital, say, look, whatever you want, we can send. So I imagine in the coming hours there'll be lots of planes heading towards the region with more rescuers and more sophisticated equipment to find missing people.
Well, John, based on the magnitude of this tragedy, do you think this quake will lead to a change in the way buildings are erected in Turkey and Syria?
In Turkey, yes. Syria is still at war, and a lot of this region is still disputed region, and that part of northern Syria is a no-go zone for many, even the military. It's still in the hands of rebels. So sadly for the Syrians, the situation is very bleak. I don't know what's going to happen to them. Their homes have collapsed. There's no one around to rebuild them except themselves. Turkey is a slightly different story, more sophisticated country in terms of infrastructure. I know that region fairly well. I stayed in a city called Diyarbakir, which is heavily affected by today's quake. And some of the hotels there are built to withstand earthquakes, because earthquakes are pretty regular features. And that part of Turkey, I think, will cope relatively well. But again, from personal experience, I was in northern Iraq last year in an earthquake zone. I was speaking to the wife of a farmer there, and we were talking about the home, which she said they'd rebuilt from the rubble of the old house that had collapsed. And, this is what's going to happen, because there just aren't the resources to build new homes. People collapsed homes, they get the stones together and rebuild the house, and it collapses again for the next earthquake. But what else can they do? They just don't have the resources and financial backing to build earthquake-proof homes. So to answer your question, in the bigger cities of Turkey, yes, buildings will be rebuilt to withstand earthquakes. But for the rest of the rural areas, it's nothing's going to change.
All right, well, we do hope with the reality of living at the edge of a tectonic plate that some sort of relief will be granted. Until then, we just continue to pray for more survivors. John Cookson, Arise Chief Correspondent, thank you so much for your time.